Hi, I'm Nancy Steenson. Welcome to this week's College Planning Tip of the Week. With me, as always, is Jack Wang. And I have a question for you today, Jack. I talk all the time about financial fit with my families, and I know it's a word that gets tossed around a lot. What exactly does financial fit mean to you and to families?
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. It's a great question because people do talk about, when looking for colleges, people talk about an academic fit, a social fit, a cultural fit, and then of course, financial fit, or people say, well, I want to find something that's affordable. Of course, that's a really loaded term, really loaded question because everybody thinks of it differently, right? What you might think of is affordable might be different than what I think, even if we have the same income. So I want to talk a little bit about how people can think about this. So on one hand, financial fit could mean what you can afford, which of course then means it leads to the question, well, how do I figure out what I can actually afford? That question right there is more of a quantitative type of calculation, right? How much are you saving or setting aside each month for college or other savings? How much you have in the bank already or saved for college? So for example, if you have $100,000 saved for college, and college is typically 4 years, that would roughly equate to $25,000 a year without having to save more, without having to take on debt. But the more important question is not how much you can afford, it's how much you're willing to afford, which is a totally different question. Now, if you think about this in our country, or I'm guessing everywhere, let's suppose that you're approved by the bank to for like a $500,000 mortgage, right? Which means you can basically buy a $500,000 house. Well, if you wanted to buy a more expensive house, but you were only approved for 500,000 a mortgage, then you have to come up with the extra cash otherwise, right? So if you want to buy a $600,000 house, then you have to come up with an extra 100,000. But that's not true when it comes to colleges. Fortunately or unfortunately, the student loan system allows people to borrow whatever amount that they need. So the Parent Plus loan allows families to borrow $80,000 a year for college if that's what they wanted to do, with basically no credit check. Well, there's a very minor one, but it's fairly minimal. So the question, all these stories about student debt and carrying out the student debt or parent debt and having to make these payments, that's where these things come from. So I would encourage families to spend a lot more time on what they're willing to afford. Just because you can afford $25,000 doesn't mean you should. And when it comes to colleges, you can actually be willing to pay more than what you can actually afford, which again, does not exist anywhere else in our country. You can't do that with anything else. So, and to that end, this is now where families, oh, and we have my cat coming in the video. This is now where families have to think and balance out and think about the name and educational quality and the experience that the student's going to get versus the price and stuff. And that is a very personal and philosophical and values-based question. So I can't point to a specific number of what, of how to answer that question. What I can just say is that in my experience, not enough, or families don't spend enough time talking about what they're willing to do to even start down this road.
Jack, that clarifies a lot. That's great information for our families. Thank you so much for that. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time on College Planning Tip of the Week.